Excellent. Well, it's wonderful to be here. I'm assuming my voice and my vision is okay. Great. So I am going to... Great. So it's wonderful to be here, and I hope you're having a good morning, night, afternoon, whatever it is you're having. And I'm going to put up some slides, and I'm going to be able to share them with you like that. Excellent. So I'm going to take a look at the history of freedom and a pivotal moment of it, which is the French Revolution of 1789 to 1794. My presentation is called La liberté guide nos pas. And I've got a picture which is actually historically inaccurate, of course. This painting by Delacroix has nothing to do with the revolution of 1789 to 1794. It is from the revolution of 1830. Nevertheless, it has one of the central figures of the French Revolution, Lady Liberty, which we also saw in the clip by Chris, which she eventually becomes, of course, the Statue of Liberty. And she was the Roman goddess of liberty, libertas, given a French, well, as you can see, a particularly French flavor by getting a part of her kit off. But she also, of course, becomes Marianne, the emblem of modern French nation. And she's born in the French Revolution. But what is the freedom that comes out of the French Revolution? And I'm going to contend that, excuse me, that it is a dialectical kind of freedom. When we talk about freedom in the French Revolution, and perhaps in the modern world, we are talking about two freedoms. Not quite the Isaiah Berlin's two freedoms either, very different in a sense. I'm going to look at two examples of these two freedoms, and so really I'm looking at four freedoms, 2 by 2. And I've got this slide ingeniously named after a novel about the French Revolution, of course. I hope you appreciate my what is it, wit, The Tale of Two Freedoms. I'm going to look at first freedom as conceptualized in political discourse during a very particular period of the French Revolution, which is the Montagnard Republic, the so-called frightening reign of terror, which is an inaccurate title, from June of 1793 to July of 1794. And then I'm going to look at freedom as conceptualized in a poem from this period, Chant du départ by MarieJoseph Chénier. And I'm going to say that each of these gives us a dialectical vision of freedom. In each, we have an account of two freedoms. The first one, I'm going to look at two speeches by Robespierre. I do understand that in modern politics, there is a, let's say, difference between what politicians say and what politicians do, but not really so during this period in French history. And Robespierre, at any rate, was somebody who often did what he said he would, for better, or some would say for worse. In the lead up to and also during the conflict with the Gironde, the right of the Convention in the political body in France, Robespierre, who was very much one of the figureheads of the left, separates in his speeches the unrestricted freedom enjoyed by capitalists, profiteers, speculators, and tyrants from the liberty of our fellow men. Here is from a speech of December 1792, very much as things are heating up, the confrontation between the Montagnard, the left, and the Gironde, the right. He says, and he's talking about food supplies, one of the biggest problems during the French Revolution, the supply of grain in particular, but also of other comestibles. Robespierre says, a proper distribution is that which places all commodities of first necessity within reach of every mortal man, and which brings abundance and life into every cottage. Does the blood properly circulate when it is blocked in the brain or in the chest? It circulates when it flows freely throughout the body. And food is the lifeblood of the people, and its free circulation is no less necessary to the health of the body politic than circulation of grain, than that of blood to the life of the human body. Aid, therefore, the free circulation of grain by preventing every harmful impediment. Now, if I stopped here, you might think Robespierre is a free marketing, neoliberal ideologue, that he's saying, remove the impediments to the free circulation of goods. But he's not saying that. In fact, he's saying that we should remove the freedoms of the profiteers that interfere with the free circulation of grains. He says, how may this object be attained? By denying to men of greed the motive or the means to hinder it. Now, there are three factors that favor such obstruction. They are secrecy, unrestricted freedom, and the certainty of escaping punishment. Unquote. What's happening in France at this point is that because of the liberalization of the market, especially of the grain trade market, the rich, capitalists, profiteers, and so on, are buying up all the supplies, creating artificial scarcity, pushing up the prices of grains, and then forcing the entire nation to pay a lot more for a loaf of bread, which is particularly hurting the lower middle class, and the working class, particularly in the urban centers. And this is actually creating starvation and famine. And at this point, the working people are taking matters into their own hands, and they're saying to the National Convention, saying, either you get rid of these right-wing, liberal politicians who are in favor of free markets, or we will do it for you. Robespierre is somewhat reluctantly at this point siding with the sans-culottes and the masses of the people. This is when the confrontation is about to become violent, and the Gironde are about to launch a civil war against the rest of France in the name of retaining their freedoms. Robespierre says, but to none of these people, he's talking about the Girondin politicians, to none of these people has it ever occurred that property carries moral responsibilities. Why should our Declaration of Rights appear to contain the same error in its definition of liberty, the most valued property of man, the most sacred of the rights that he holds from nature? We have justly said that this right was limited by the rights of others. Why have we not applied the same principle to property, which is a social institution, as if the eternal laws of nature were less inviolable than the conventions evolved by man? You have drafted, politicians have drafted numerous articles in order to ensure the greatest freedom for the exercise of property, but you have not said a single word to define its nature and its legitimacy, so that your declaration appears to have been made not for ordinary men, but for capitalists, profiteers, speculators, and tyrants. I propose to you to rectify these errors by solemnly recording the following truths. 1, property is the right of each and every citizen to enjoy and to dispose of the portion of goods that is guaranteed to him by law. 2, the right of property is limited, as are all other rights, by the obligation to respect the property of others. 3, it may not be so exercised as to prejudice the security or the liberty or the existence or the property of our fellow men. So the very, very explicit division between two kinds of freedom: the freedom of the capitalist and the rich to do whatever they want in order to get richer, and the freedom of the rest of us, which gets imperiled by their freedom when we can no longer afford to buy bread, or as the case might be, to pay rent here in Melbourne. Okay, so one way to look at it is to talk about these two freedoms is, of course, Marx's ideas of freedom. I'm not going to dwell on this because I believe the next presentation may be precisely about this point. Marx's definition of freedom in Capital Volume 3, which is not restricted to the old Marx. It is also in the so young Marx, in the German ideology in particular, defines freedom as that which begins only where labor, which is determined by necessity and mundane considerations, ceases. So in short, when we have to work less to be able to eat and have shelter, then we become freer. Now, this is what Marx calls freedom in the realm of necessity. He gets that binary of freedom and necessity from Hegel. Then he takes this freedom, Marx, and he, as a good dialectician that he is, he divides one into two again, and he says, this is my reading of this passage from Capital Volume 3, Marx says that there are two different freedoms, even once we have defined freedom contra necessity. There is a freedom in the realm of necessity, or in the realm of production, and then there is freedom, the true freedom, which is the true realm of freedom, which is beyond the realm of necessity or of production. In short, if you like, one of them is when we get to work less in order to satisfy our needs. The other one is when we are completely liberated, if you like, from having to work for somebody else. Communism, if you like. In Marx's thought, that's very simplistic, I apologize. At any rate, I'm detecting these two in a poem from the French Revolution. Now back to the French Revolution, we went forward, now we're going backwards. From a poem that Robespierre apparently personally liked, although I haven't exactly found the evidence of that, but this is assumed that Robespierre liked this poem, La Chant de départ, written by Joseph-Marie Chénier. It is one of the most famous poems, which is turned into a song during the Revolution, and it is sung to this date by the French military. You probably recognize the tune if I were to sing it to you, but it's too early in the morning and my neighbors will not like it, nor will anyone else, frankly, if I were to sing this song in French. But I will tell you the beginning and the end of it, because it relates to our conversation. It begins like this. La victoire en chantant nous ouvre la barrière, la liberté guide nos pas. And it ends with this. Les Français donneront au monde et la paix et la liberté. Now, what happens between these two namings of freedom is a lot of stuff. It's very dramatic. Literally, we have dramatic persona, each singing, each being given a stanza or a verse to talk about the phenomena of French volunteers leaving to fight in the French Revolutionary Wars, departing, as the title of the poem suggests. We have representatives of the entire nation. We have a mother of a soldier. We have the sister of a soldier, the wife of a soldier, the child of a soldier, the father of the soldier. It's uber inclusive and pluralistic. At any rate, it begins with this invocation. Victory, singing, opens the barriers for us. Liberty guides our path. And it ends by saying this: the French soldiers will give to the world peace and liberty. I'm going to say that there are two liberties here, that these previous two liberties, well, they're different liberties. That's not the same liberty. The same liberty that opens the, guides the path is not the same thing that will be given to the world once the French revolutionaries have toppled the crown heads of Europe. I would say that the freedom in the first stanza of the poem is coupled with military victory, as victory removes the barriers on the revolutionaries' path. Freedom guides them along the same path. Here, freedom has a presence, albeit via personification, which can be seen as that which comes into existence and is actualized as a result of a victory. But freedom in the last stanza is coupled with peace. It is something that the revolutionaries will give the entire world in the future, once the imminent freedoms occasioned by earlier victories have transformed war into peace and have in the process transformed the quality of freedom itself. Freedom is no longer something that comes about when mundane barriers are removed, but it is the properly utopian name of universal emancipation. Seen in the light of Marx's two freedoms, we may say that the first freedom in the poem is the freedom in the realm of struggle, and the second freedom is the freedom beyond the realm of struggle. Precisely as Marx would have it, whilst these two freedoms are separate, the latter entirely depends upon the former and is a development of it. As such, we may also say the poem is correspondent with, but not a representation of, the Montagnard political discourse of freedom, which too was dialectical and presented two separate freedoms. Seen together, the poem and the politician's discourse give us a new understanding of the dialectic of freedom during the French Revolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ali. I think we're on firm